So we're holding towards the end of Siman Tzadik above. Hopefully we should be done by Thursday. Then we have one more Siman, Mitzvah Shem, next week. A very short Siman. That's it for Basar בחלב. So before we go on to Sif Gimel, which speaks about using a meducha, a grinder, I guess you would call it a manual grinder. Is there another word for it?
Mortar and pestle.
The meducha, the actual meducha itself.
Pestle?
Yeah, okay, the pestle. Yeah, to grind, but that's what it's used for.
Yeah,
to grind, right. So before we go into that halacha, just a little bit of a review about dvarim charifim. Obviously, we know by now that there is a machloikes about what constitutes a davar chorif. There's of course some consensus that a true davar chorif would, together with duchka de sakina, give out the tam that is inside the sakin, the knife. It is not that does not in itself necessarily mean that if you have some sort of other duchka, like we're going to see with the grinder, that we would have the same results. So we don't know yet the halacha by other forms of pressure that are being applied. We did see that the combination of duchka de sakina with the davar chorif, if it's a true davar chorif, it does have that ability of extracting the tam from the sakin, in the case of the knife, and allowing it to be absorbed into that onion, into that snon, whatever you consider the davar chorif. Okay, and that of course can present some problems in the kitchen, whether it's melchiks or fleishiks, and especially of course if you're dealing with a dvar isur, a tam of isura, because as we know, with the tam of isur there's no heter of nat bar nat, but with hetero there is, we've covered that, there is the heter of nat bar nat in various situations. The question is, does it apply to duchka de sakina as well? So we said that there's some who hold yes and some who hold no. That in this case of duchka de sakina with an onion or a real snon, in other words a real davar chorif, then the nat bar nat would not help. Alright, and because it does not help, of course, we have to be concerned how to use that onion, whether we can use it with melichiks or fleishiks, depending on what kind of a knife we use. So that's always good to be careful, lechatchila, according to everyone, to use the proper knife. And the question is, what happens already if you did use the wrong knife, and now you intend to use that onion or tznon for the opposite type of food? In other words, that knife is a fleishik knife, and you want to use onion with melichiks, or the other way around. Now the question is that already b'di'evet? Can you do it anyway? And as far as the tam, how far did the tam penetrate into the onion? Did it penetrate only kedei netila, or does the whole thing become asur? So lemaisa, we said that we can always be mekel b'di'evet kedei netila, because the shita that asurs the whole thing is that's only the Rashba. The Ramah brings the Rashba. It is affected, and have a shishim kedei. So if somebody by mistake cut an onion with a fleishik knife and use it for melichiks, he may be able to be mekel altogether, because there are shitas that hold that an onion is not a davar chorif, like it's done. So it all depends on what the circumstance. But a kedei netila for sure, the di'eved is the most we would have to be concerned with. So this was one concern, the concern of the sakin together with the davar chorif, and we went along and said that the davar chorif is a machloikes, but we are machmir today, the Ma'aser, we're all machmir, that the davar chorif includes, now we'll see base, garlic and onions and leeks and all kinds of other goodies that can possibly be acidic enough or chorif enough to have similar results as it's known. The only question was, did the Gemara really mean only those particular items listed in the Gemara, or did it mean v'chayoytze bahen, like the Rambam's lashon is, and those that are similar, to them, equivalent? And that could even include some very, very sour fruit. And when we talk about very sour fruit, we mean very, very sour fruit. Halacha l'maisa, not just a little bit soury. And that is important because that will lead us to understand a little bit Sif Dalet, which speaks about lemons. So right now I'm saying, for fruit to be considered sour, they would have to be extremely sour. A little bit of sour, they would not, most boys would not have a problem with that. But there is a list. Shulchan brings down a list. I even think that the Shulchan possibly brings, and there are some poskim that bring down a list of what the vegetables would constitute a double chorif. And not everybody would agree with that list, but at least we know that they may be an issue with them. All right. Now, we did say, however, and Ramah brings it down, that in some situations when we buy stuff from a goy, we can be mekel because they did not necessarily use a sakin. They could have used a more of a chatzina. And that is usually the case when dealing with certain vegetables where they yank it out from the ground and cut it in a certain way using certain tools other than the knives that are used for isurim.
So that's to remove the branches or whatever is growing
Sure,
on the back.
exactly.
Roots.
And sometimes they cut into the vegetable itself a little bit too. As the Shach explains, it depends how far they went. That's how you can tell. So that's an important point that will also help us understand some of the next seifim, because that is one of the heterim that can sometimes be applied. That if we can assume that there is the possibility that in this particular case, whatever the case may be, you bought fish, you bought vegetables, a guy used his knife, perhaps he has been using certain knives that are only used for that particular job that he's doing. That can sometimes be a heter. However, I did see a tshuva, one of the poskim writes that if the goy tells you, oh, by the way, I used my axe, that he may not necessarily have nemanas, right? So if he asks, or you ask him, what did you use to cut this? In other words, if we have to ask, who says that the goy has nemanas? Who says that he has credibility, that we can actually trust him, that he did use, in fact, something that is mutter to use. But the Ramah did bring down that in some situations, it's possible that that's what they used, and that is why the minhag is to buy certain radishes that their znavois, their tails are cut off, because talinon, we make that assumption. This is all sif aleph. Talinon shenasa b'mor v'chatzina. So over there, it's not because of neimanos. We actually are toilet. We make that clear assumption. Most likely, we've seen it done. I mean, there's no reason why he should take his home knife and go to the field and start cutting. There are tools for this job. So certain jobs have specific tools, and you can be toilet. You can make that assumption. It's not a problem of neimanos. Problem of neimanos can come in other situations, but not in that case. So what we see from that is, of course, that we may have certain additional heterim depending on the circumstances that we're doing. Isura or basar v'chalav, of course, basar v'chalav is in one's own kitchen, is a different shadow. But here we're dealing with Isura, where not for sure is not going to be of any help. Yeah.
I'm not sure you already left the topic of the Sakin.
No, we're still there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Reverse question.
A reverse question, yeah.
So far we've been talking about using a knife to cut something spicy.
You're right.
And Chumrah, we say that, and the spiciness,
right,
prevent the nut bar nut situation, and the taste that the knife originally absorbed.
Right, that's correct.
Now, if we have such a onion, let's say,
right,
means now that the onion is a primary taste.
Correct.
If I now cut such an onion, do we also say that now the onion primary meat?
That's a good question, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. Yeah, we're going to be talking about next. So, in case I forget, you'll remind me. Yeah, but that's one of the questions because this can happen, and I'll tell you why this could happen too. Yeah, but before again we go on, it's important to recall that we can definitely be soymech, as I believe. Who brings this down? If you have various sirufim, you can for sure be soymech on the various other shitas. Let me see if I wrote it down over here. We spoke about it last time.
So you have for that not to be considered a product, right?
Yeah, well, that's one. That's one. It's important to keep in mind that we sometimes can be soymech on, especially the Chochmah Sodom, I think, is the one that says that. So Chochmah Sodom. Or whatever. If you have three tzirufim, one is that if it's not a tznon, the balabosa did not cut a tznon. She cut onions or whatever, yeah. And it's a fleshik or Melicha knife, but it's clean, because some opinions hold that the main problem was that it has shamnunis. Otherwise, there's no problem. So if it's clean, great. Okay. Then we can use knot by knot.
And maybe it was used.
No, that's if it's a Melicha knife. If it's a Melicha knife, Ilan is right. If it's a Melicha knife that we're dealing with, she cut it with a Melicha knife, you can apply that too. That
So now
more,
we have three
that roiv tashmishoy was used with klisheni or less, right? No, but you also have this. The third tziruf, which is more important, really, is that it's an eino ben yoimo, right? So, but very good. What you said about Melicha knife is mentioned,
no.
right?
A quick question about the
Yeah.
So in other words, we're saying that not everyone holds that the charif and the kino override the enyom.
That's correct. Yeah. Sure. Exactly. We always can rely on that if we need to, even though we're machmer in all those areas that I just mentioned.
If the three come together.
If the three come together, yes, you can be makel on that. Yeah. All right. There was a detail you mentioned that I thought about it when I went home, and I double checked it, and it turns out that it's not exactly as we were thinking. And that is, when it comes to knives, there are various ways to clean them, depending on how they're used, just like any keli. And sometimes it may happen that you're stuck somewhere, you don't have your own kosher knife, and a guy is cutting something for you, right? Or he's not cutting for you, he's giving you his knife, and you go ahead and cut it. Can you use his knife that has Isser on it to cut your stuff cold? We're talking about cold right now. Obviously, you need to do Hagala or Libun, depending on what the keli is before you use it. But for using a goy's kelim for cold purposes, b'di'eved, b'shat hadachak, it is possible if you use duchka de sakina. Okay? Right. I'm sorry, duchka de sakina. If you use ne'itza bekarka. See, I'm thinking of duchka and I'm thinking of ne'itza. Duchka means, you're pushing, and ne'itza means you're pushing. So ne'itza bekarka, we said, is a method that's very unique to sakinim. Basically, what's involved is that you stick a knife in the hard ground 10 times. And what does that accomplish? It's meshafshif. It rubs off anything that may be on it, on the surface, and even a little bit inside of the blade.
Why will the sun?
Right.
Fork
or spoon. Right. Sure. No, that's not a heter. We use this method of kashering it temporarily. Sure. Yeah. Well, with a knife. Yeah, with a knife, you can easily, first of all, the method of cleansing is such that when you stick it in the ground, it accomplishes a certain thing. In other words, it removes.
Should do that
So one second. With a saki, that's what it accomplishes. The method of sticking it in the ground is able to rub off whatever blia might be there on the surface. Now,
what does it permit us to do?
Yeah, but 1 second. To cut. With a spoon and a fork, you're not cutting.
So you don't have the problem.
You don't have the problem that you have with a sak. Sakin, you're cutting. Remember, we just said that duchka de sakina is a problem. With a spoon and a fork,
So in other words,
and you're using cold. It's a cold spoon. He gave you a cold spoon. It's washed. It's clean. There's no real isser.
So the ne'itza de karka averts a problem that is specific to a knife because of the duchka.
Right, because of the duchka de sakina.
And we don't have duchka de spoon.
With a fork or not? No, a spoon. No, we don't have it.
Even though the fork is little things.
Yeah, it's not the same. Yeah, here it's just serrated and it's the pressure.
When you said the saki didn't matter.
Right, it didn't matter. Right, that's true too. Because it's the duchka. It's a combination of duchka that we're concerned.
But we do have to be careful about any kind of mamashis that blade if it's
sure.
serrated.
Yeah. So anyway, duchka de sakina is able to accomplish that, and we are able to use that.
Ne'itza bekarka.
Again, ne'itza bekarka. Yeah. Right.
You don't have to go to a hagal.
No, you do eventually. If you plan to use this keli on a permanent basis, and this is a treif knife, you need to do libun. That's the halacha for knives. There's a question of what happens by the even if you did a golop, that's something else. But you have to do libun. Now, coming back to the point. So ne'itza is helpful in situations of tzoinen, right? What you mentioned as far as eino ben yomo is not exact for, in other words, it's not the halacha for ne'itza bekarka. Ne'itza bekarka does not require eino ben yomo. You were mentioning, but it has to be eino ben yomo. I said to myself, no. Eino ben yomo, I first thought, yes, everything's eino ben yomo, but not necessarily. If you want to do libun on this knife, it doesn't have to be eino ben yomo. Even libun. The only time you need eino ben yomo is when you do hagala.
Aha. Let me ask you.
Okay, I double checked it. That's what I'm saying. What we assumed is not necessarily necessary.
So you only need to be eino ben to do hagala, but we need the karka and
libun.
When you don't need.
You don't need it.
Now
We know why. Why do you need eino ben yomo, if you recall?
lousy.
It's because when you do Hagala, which is a bishul, the time goes in and goes out, unless you have shishim. You can do Hagala in Bein Yoimo if you for sure have shishim connected the Kli.
Now, by Basar b'chalav,
right?
If you're going to remove meat out of the walls of the pot, I understand.
That's not a problem. We're talking about Isser right now.
By Isser,
right.
I don't understand. Isn't that Mevatel and Isser?
No. It's a form of
I have an Isser in this pot.
Yeah, that's not the main problem.
I'm using, let's say, C.
Yeah, you're eliminating it completely.
Yeah, but I'm using sick in the water to remove something that right now is an existing.
Right.
I do need Ein Yoma by Hagala.
By Hagala, yes.
Because of that.
Unless you have Shishim Keneged it.
But by Shishim, I would be doing Mevatel into the...
Yeah. I mean, so Lechatchila...
Isn't that exactly the case?
But that's not the main reason.
Isn't that the case that we said, if I have a pot with food and I have an Isser inside, I'm not allowed to fill up the food in order to be Mevatel?
Yeah, but remember, by Basar and Cholav you don't have Isser, you have a Terah.
That's what I said.
Right, by Isser, by Isser, of course. Yeah, you have other reasons of making it an Ein Yom. The Stam Kelim, of course, are going to be an Ein Yom. But the main idea is that if you're going to do Libun, okay, you don't have the other issue.
So that's my question.
Yeah.
Why by Libun don't I have issue of Mevatel Salah?
Because I told that is not the main issue. That is never the main issue. If you want to buy a keli from a goy, okay, and you want to, that's what Hagalas Kelim is all about, is removing Isurim.
No, but when it's an Eno Ben Yomo, it's not really an Isser anymore.
Yeah, right, yeah. If you could wait. But you don't need to wait if you're doing Libun. Yeah. Now, Neitza Bakarka, the same thing. Because when you go to a fish market and the guy is cutting up your fish, right? Yeah. And he's used that for catfish, and he's used it for tray fish. As long as you see that your fish is a kosher fish, it has scales, you can let him cut your fish. The only thing is that you either have to rinse the edges or take a little klipa off the edges, or where his knife went because he used a knife. That's what we do.
That's because the fish is not hard. Sharp.
That's because we're dealing with cold. The fish is cold, it's not sharp, but there's a sakin. So either you rinse well the edges, or better, you cut the edges of where the knife touched. Over there, the sakin itself can also be mutar if he did hadacha. If he washed that sakin very well, there would be no problem. The only thing is that, it's not ben yoima. We don't require eino ben yoima by that too. You see, so eino ben yoima is only a requirement by Hagala, not anywhere else where you have a method of at least temporarily permitting the use of that treif knife, temporarily, it does not require eino.
Yes, so
right? No, because the neitza would be sufficient.
You don't need even the thought you said.
No, I'm saying in the cases of where neitza would be necessary, and that would be fine. That would also not require an additional eino ben yoma for, because we say it's okay for the use that you're using it. You don't need to be concerned about eino ben yoma. So that's what I'm saying. Eino ben yoma is only an issue according to what we do. Not meikar adin necessarily, but lechatchila in the case of Hagala. That's all. If somebody went ahead and did it anyway, it would be fine.
Are you saying we should rely upon one? Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Washing it off, cleaning it, make sure that it's clean. But obviously we don't 100% rely on it. We don't see him all the time unless he's washing it in between every single fish that he's doing.
If he washes it before your fish.
Yeah. Because this is tzoinen. Because it's cold, right? Hadocha is sufficient.
And you don't have anything sharp here, nothing spicy.
Right, yeah. So if he washed the knife, rinsed it very well, and we see that there's no shamnunis of any of those shrimps or lobsters, right? Then you wouldn't even have to do anything. Because it's tzoinen. So we have duchka de sakina, but we have tzoinen. In these halachas, of course, we have the combination of duchka de sakina with the double charv, which makes things a little bit more complex. All right. In Seif Gimel, Tavlin shenidochu b'meducha shel basar ben yoima also le'achla mechalav. So we have spices that were ground in. You said it's called a pestle. The meducha is called in English a pestle, right?
I think the pestle is the flea.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, that makes sense.
Pestle
is a grind, right?
The mortar is what?
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a fleishike meducha ben yoima also le'achla mechalav. So the Mechaber says in Siv Gimel, and this he takes from. He actually elaborates more in the base. He said, the Shem Sefer Truma. Okay, that if it was a fleishik and meducha, you crushed the spices, it's ben yoima also le'ochlo bechalav. So what do we see from this? That from this halacha alone, as the Beis Yosef actually explains, that it's a combination again of the pressure of the meducha that we don't allow for nat bar nat. Otherwise, it would be nat bar nat here too. No, but it's the pressure of the meducha together with the tavlin, the double chorev, that excludes nat bar nat. Why? Because by the pressure of the meducha with the spice, it penetrates the nivla. He says the nivla tam mamash. The tam is mamash absorbed into the meducha. However, he tells us that this is only ben yoima. Okay, so now we have to understand why he only says ben yoima, and what does everybody else say about this? So the Ramah says yesh omer afilo eina ben yoima. All right. So what's going on over here? What we have here is a meducha. Okay, and we are being told that the meducha is almost no different than a sakin, obviously. But the question is, how did the meducha become fleishik to begin with? It says, "Tavla sheneducha bemeducha shel basar."
However, at the time we're cut with the flesh.
What's that?
Suppose with the fleishik knife.
No, how did the meducha become fleishik?
So that's how it was transferred.
How?
That's how it was transferred. You use spices that were cut with a fleishik knife, and now when you ground the spices, of the flesh was transferred. Otherwise, you don't use a grind. You don't use.
One more time. Can you say that again?
You cut the spices originally with a knife. Now
Oh,
the taste of
okay.
flesh into the spices. Now you ground them in the.
That's not so poshut. No, that's not so poshut. That
People
That wouldn't work.
What?
Yeah.
to tenderize.
Yeah.
So they could have been to tenderize.
Yeah. Because we're going to talk about that next. Even though the Bach, I think, maybe the Mogen Avram, they may hold like you that it is possible for somebody to take an onion that is fleishik as a result of having it cut once upon a time with a fleishik knife and transferring that tam to another form of knife. Everybody does not hold by that, and I'll tell you soon why. Yeah, but that would be your first assumption. You think, oh, maybe that's how it happened. No, the only way that a meducha can become fleishik and pose a problem is if you had ground meat together with the onion at the same time. You had meat with onions, and you were grinding them together at the same time. That's the only way it could be a meducha fleishik. Why? Because let's say you use the meducha just to grind meat.
So you don't have spices. Why should
No spices.
Unless it's hot.
No spices.
No hot, no spices.
Guess what? The halacha is that meducha does not become fleishik.
Yeah, why should it? No spices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no spices.
And it's not hot.
A meducha will not become fleishik just because you crushed some meat with it. It's cold, and there's no spice. So it's a good question. So how does the meducha ever become fleishik? Only, the place can hold, only if it's combined together with the meat, you have some spice at the same time you're doing it together. You're grinding it, and sometimes that's done. That's how you do it. You don't necessarily grind everything separately, you sometimes grind them together. That's the only way it could be, that the tam, that everybody would agree, that the tam of the basar, because of the onion in it, was transferred over to the meducha. But if it was just a fleishike onion, which received some tam basar from some other source, it will not do it. It's not sufficient to be mavliya the tam in it into the meducha. The other way around, no. The onion can extract the tam basar in the meducha, but it cannot be mavliya in there. Why not? Because the tam of the basar that eventually comes to the meducha from the onion is niklash. It is a nat bar nat. In other words, the fact that the tam has to travel in several steps eventually does become a nat bar nat.
But we said whatever is transferred to the onion, in the onion is now called the primary taste.
In the onion, it's still called a fleishike onion, right? But to be able to transfer into another kli, we don't say that. So therefore, the question arises. I was going to answer that question earlier. Is what happens if you cut an onion with a fleishike knife and you put that onion in your parva blender? Does that blender become fleishiks? The place can speak about it, and they say no. The blender is another knife. It's equivalent to whether your shaila was, and you cut it with another knife, or as I saw being brought down by the poskim, the actual they ask about blenders these days because this is a shayla that has been asked many times apparently. It's just thrown elsewhere. People ask, well, I cut the onion with a fleishik knife, but then I put it into my parva blender. Did I make my blender fleishiks? And the answer is no. Because the tam, that's a very important halacha, because I can see it easily happen. We cannot use that onion in melichiks because of what you said. Yes, but with the onion.
I don't understand why not.
The onion does not have the koach of transferring the tam into another keli, into another food. Yes, but not into another keli. You need roita for that, and you don't have roita. And without roita, it's equivalent to a nat bar nat. In the sakin itself, originally we don't say nat bar nat, perhaps because of the duchka de sakina. But in order to do that again one more time into the other sakin, no, it doesn't. It's niklash. They say the tam has become diluted.
Okay, so let me tell you why I find that confused. With respect to, let's say, I cooked the with meat.
Okay.
And now that I cooked the meat, according to some opinions, that ability to act as sharp.
According to some.
Yes.
Yeah.
So going with that opinion.
Right. So it's still an onion.
Right. Cook the onion with meat. That onion, that is still an onion with taste, I can't have with milk, obviously.
No.
What if I cut that onion with?
It's a machloikas, right? If a cooked onion still retains the sharpness that it did before,
right,
that's all.
Okay, but now if it, according to the opinion, that it does retain, and it was cooked in a meat pot.
Yeah.
It was cooked mamish together with meat.
Right.
Now I cut it with a knife.
Right.
If, according to the opinion that it retains its sharpness, din of being something hard.
Right.
So, would that knife become meat?
Not necessarily. Or milchik, or fleischik in this case, yeah. Not necessarily, no.
Why? If I cut
because we
knife
say
that has onion in it. If I combine onion with
right,
and I cut that onion with a knife, does the knife become like we said by the mortar and pestle?
one more time if you did one.
How does the mortar become fleischig?
Because of the combination of the two.
Because of the combination of the onion and the meat.
And then at the same time.
At the same time.
Then it has the koach.
If I take the combination of onion and meat and I cut it with a knife, does the knife become fleischig?
Yes.
Right. If I cut the meat alone without the onion, it won't become fleischig.
Right.
But together with the onion, it does become fleischig.
Right.
Now, if instead of
real meat. Yeah.
Real meat. Now, instead of the meat in combination with the onion, what if the onion is in combination with the meat?
Yeah. So that.
What does the onion do for the meat? It makes it spicy.
Yeah. Right. Our main concern, remember, was what? The tama balua and the saking being transferred over into the onion, not necessarily the other way around.
But there you said that it was already once transferred. Here I'm talking about a taste that wasn't transferred through a keli to the onion.
But it was.
The onion was cooked directly with the meat. So the onion absorbed the meat taste directly from
the
primary source.
Okay, what you're saying is if it was
it's a
meaty onion.
Right.
It might be different then.
Yes,
then you would be right. Yes, especially.
And then if I cut it with a knife,
if you hold that the onion even cooked still has that.
Yes.
Then it would be a problem. Yeah,
right.
It could be.
Right. According to the opinion that it is.
Yeah, klipa perhaps. Yeah.
So if we say in that case that it is, where the onion absorbed the taste directly from the meat, it's a primary
Right, it's
taste.
a primary meat taste.
Now we say because of the sharpness, it absorbs from a duchta de sakina, that's also a primary meat because I can't have it with dairy.
Right.
So why would it be any different?
Well, I can't have it with dairy, right?
Because the taste in that
because there's some taste.
No,
because there's some taste, but there's a big difference.
So you're saying there's a third type. There's a primary meat taste that will be cooked.
Because that's it's like the real basar almost, right?
Right. So there's a primary taste if it cooked directly with the meat.
There's
a nat bar nat if it cooked in a pot.
That's correct.
And then there's something in between that lagabe eating it with dairy is like a primary, but lagabe transfer into a keli is like a nat bar nat.
Right. This because it behaves differently. In the case of a fleishik and onion, it's like the real fleish. You cooked it with the chalon, for example, right?
Right. So in other words, there's really
a third category.
There's a third category then.
Yes, there would. Yeah, because in the case of the knife, it really does behave like nat bar nat, but we're not lenient on it because we say it's transferred directly, but it is niklash at some point.
So in other words, with respect to eating with dairy, we're machmir, and with respect to transfer it to a keli, we're mekel.
We're mekel, that it doesn't have that koach to go. Yeah.
And interesting that the koach transfer depends on its source.
Because remember, it has to do two peulos, even though we're not saying it that way, of being maflit and mavliya. But that's pretty much what what it comes
well,
down
it
to.
would seem that what is being muffled would still have the of the proper taste because it's with dairy.
Yeah.
So the problem would only be
Yeah, but the reality is that the amounts, it comes down to amounts, and the amount is very minute, and if it has to go and travel to another keli, it becomes niklash. And that's where they're makel on it. All right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Meat alone.
okay,
If it's meat,
Right.
that point is going away.
right.
There would be no point into it
Sure.
dried or meat already.
Uh-huh.
Why then don't we say, because the item that it's pounding into is wet, even without the spice?
Yeah,
Otherwise we're being naked.
no, right, because it just, anytime we use something cold, right?
It's cold, but
Yeah,
that's-
it doesn't really penetrate. Yeah, that's what, I mean. That's a mitzias. That's the reality. That's the fact. That I guess it has been tested. They know that duchka de sakina even by itself does not really go that far unless there's something to lead it. The meat is hot, and in conjunction with the knife, it is able to travel further, or something sharp, because then it's able to take out all that time in the knife. Here, even let's say even this was a fleshike pestle, yeah, for whatever reason it's fleshy for sure. If there wouldn't be a spice, what's going to take out that time from the pestle into the whatever now, to whatever is being ground now? It has to be to the combination of two forces here to create the I guess the energy or the strength to be able to penetrate.
Well, what we're saying is that the pressure together with the spiciness combine to be something like heat.
Exactly, that's what we're saying. Exactly, combine like heat. Yeah. All right. Anyway, but what's interesting on this seif about meducha, which I think we briefly mentioned last time, is the mechaber. Mechaber says tavel shenduch meducha shebasu ben yomo. Ben yomo. Didn't you say in seif aleph that some say even eino ben yomo? Then why didn't you say eino ben yomo here too? And especially that in Taaruvot, you did mention that even eino ben yomo is also by a davar choref, right? יש מי שאומר שאם שמו פלפלים בגדרו של איסו שאינו בס יומו, הכל also דחוף ומשהו לשבח. So there you did introduce that opinion that pilpilin, those hot peppers in gdero shel iso she'eino bas yomo, it would make it also, because it converts it to a good taste. So here the Mechava only says about ben yomo. What's the difference between this Sif Aleph and then Taaruvot? What will be the difference? All right. So the Kreisi Uplesi answers very simply that Taaruvot is talking about an iser. As we explained, by iser there's no nat bar nat. So we're machmir on the effect of the davar chorif over there, that it actually can take something which is also eino ben yomo and make it sweet again. And here we're talking about hetera, very simply. And in the hetera, you have the heter, the tziruf of the heter of nat bar nat. Very simple. That's a Kreisi Uplesi. However, this Kreisi Uplesi does not explain then why the Mechaber on Sif Aleph did give us the opinion of Eino Ben Yomo, and here not. In other words, it explains why it's not a stira between here and Taaruvot. Taaruvot is Isser, and here it's Heter, and here we can use not by not. But then why mention it in Sif Aleph and not mention it here? In Sif Aleph we're talking about Heter too. Right, so that still would be a question of the Mechaber as to why not mention it in Sif Gimel, just like you did in Sif Aleph, that some say that Eino Ben Yomo, it would also be a problem. After all, you hold that Meducha is the same like Duchka de Sakina, right? Yeah. If that's the case, then why treat it differently? All right, so Rabbi Kiva Eger has a different explanation for the Mechaber. Rabbi Kiva Eger says that in Kuf Gimel we're talking about Bishul. By Bishul, everybody is moide, that the tam can be niflat. And therefore the Mechaber was machmir there, Isura, because he's talking about Bishul. The method being used over there to extract the tam was Bishul. Here we're talking about Duchko. And once you're talking about some sort of duchka, whether it's a medoicha or a sakin, you could be mitzvah of the other shittas that hold this duchka and a chorf is not maflit, a balua, and it's only mavliya the shamnunis. That it could do. It could be mavliya shamnunis on the sakin, but it should be maflit the balua and the saki, not everybody holds by that. So we can apply that leniency, those shitas. So therefore, why did he not mention it? Why didn't he bring the Yesh Oimrim over here in Sif Aleph? That are machmir be'eno ben yoimo. Very simple. Because here we're talking about tavlin. And we're not talking about snon. Sif Aleph, we're talking about snon, where there's more poiskim who are machmir. And here we're not talking about snon. Very simple teretz. I think I like Rabbi Kiva Eger's, even though the Kreisi Plesi is right, but the Rabbi Kiva Eger's answer or explanation also explains why he left out the Yesh Oimrim him. Or that even Eino Ben Yomo would be us. It's very simple, because he's talking about Tavlin, he's not talking about Snon. Right? Some poskim were only Machmir but Snon, and the rest they were Mekel. So we can definitely. And I saw one of the poskim say that even the Ramah would agree that if it would, even though the Ramah says V'yesh Omer Afilo Eino Ben Yomo, that even the Ramah would agree that if this was not Snon, that you can be also lenient if it's not Ben Yomo. But that's a big chiddush to say that, because the Ramah just says simple Yesh Oisrim or Yesh Omer Afilo Eino Ben Yomo. All right. But at least we know that there are some who are not necessarily machmir in other spices, only tznon. So that's definitely a tziruf, and that would explain why there's no contradictions in the mechaber. That this case is different. You don't have to be so machmir. Anyway, so getting back to our questions, somebody cut an onion with a fleishik knife and then put that onion into a blender. So just for references, in case you want to know where it is, the Magen Avraham brings it down, that similar question, and he's the one, I think it was the Magen Avraham, he's the one that answers, and the Even HaOizer and others say no. That the Davar Chorif can only take out the tam, take out all the tam perhaps, that's below in the Kli, but cannot be Mavliyat later. Ultimately, the tam is niklash, as he says. In other words, to take from one kli and take it, transfer into another kli, the tam, whatever tam is there, is going to be weakened. So it's a machloikas, and I think the points were pretty much are meikal. I think Rabbi Elyahu, I don't remember who said that. No, and actually that was another case. In this case, a lot of points say it's fine. You don't have to be machmer.
Even if I cook it's non, gets rid of some other thing that's spicy. We're talking case of the Gemara.
Right.
In a fleishik pot. And then I cook that same tznon in a parva pot. The parva pot will not become.
Well, then you still have something that's flesh.
No, I didn't have meat in it.
In the tznon?
Tznon that's cooked in a meat pot. A yom of meat.
Oh, not with meat.
Not with meat.
No, then it wouldn't be a problem. No.
But it's a tznon now.
It would be a real nat by nat, if not more than that. Yeah.
No, it's not
makes no difference. Yeah. Because when do we say, according to the shittas, that spices can make the eino ben yomo in the cooking?
No, it's
right? Here, your scenario is a whole different scenario. You cooked it's not in a fleishik pot. That means that the tam, whatever tam was there, was machlil l'shvach. You're saying, so it's not an eino ben yomo, and it absorbed it. And now you took that tam and put it into another pot, and you have again water, and
it would remind me a little bit of the case where we boiled water in a case that was used for meat, and we boiled water in it. And we said we have to count from the time we boiled the water.
Yeah, I understand. Because when did we say about cooking that it could be, according to some, an issue, is that you put a lot of spices, of course, and then it does not become an eino ben yomo anymore. Okay. Yeah.
It's not in the space of the Gemara.
But remember, it's still a nat bar nat.
No, that's not. It takes.
No, not it's not banat is taken away with duchka de sakina and snon.
But that's because you don't have heat. We're talking about heat, so we don't need to.
Yeah, but according to some, it would be a regular, because even if, remember, we said that even in a regular bishul.
No, my point is a different point. I'm not talking about an eino ben yomo.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a ben yomo pot.
Right.
And normally we would have the leniency of nat bar nat.
Exactly.
But since it's a tznon,
so,
and we said that tznon takes away the nat bar nat.
By ducha de sakina it does, not by bishul. No, remember we talked about
why
that.
Why would the tznon be more aggressive when we have a ducha de sakina?
Actually, you're right. There are some opinions that say afuch. if it does it by ducha the sakina, kol shekin it should do by bishul. But we don't hold like that. I think.
No.
Yeah, no, we don't hold like that. We hold that the chidush was dafka by ducha the sakina because it goes direct. I remember the question right now. It's a good point what you're saying, but not everybody holds like that. That it would still remain a not by not situation because of the way the time travels, as opposed to the ducha directly on the tzno, where we lose the advantage of not by not.
So then by roasting it will be a problem.
By roasting it will be a problem, exactly.
But we also say that when the paste is transferred into the boiling water,
right,
the number one, because the water is boiling together with tznon at the same time, there's no intermittent period of cooling down and resting, the water is not called a additional transfer, an additional nut in tam.
If it goes directly, you're saying?
Because we're saying if the water and the tznon are boiling in that pot simultaneously, we don't see the water is a transfer stage that makes it a nut in tam.
Why?
Because for that reason, because they're boiling simultaneously. So the water is just causing the transfer of the taste to transfer successfully. It doesn't reduce.
Oh, according to the Mikvaot, which I think was, according to the shittas that hold that bishul does not qualify as a not by not because of what is happening. Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, you should be able to permit even onion.
Yeah. So the Ashkenazim are machmer on that more than the Sfardim.
Because if I cook the meat in one pot, I also have water between the two things.
Yeah, but with heter, I think we would be mater anyway. We would be lenient by heter, by not in that case. Yeah, so you took that stone and then you cooked it again in another pot. It did a lot of traveling. I don't think it would be such a problem. Anyway, it requires to think. One should really think more into it. It's a good question because it's a double charif, according to the Ramo, who's more machmir on that in the cooking process. But I find that's more in a situation where the Eino Ben Yom becomes a Ben Yoima. So therefore, that which is being cooked right now, right?
It's as though it was cooked in a Ben Yom pot.
Yeah, that's all.
But that's something else.
Yeah.
No, what I mean is, so let's say, according to the opinion that the Davar Charev does away with not by cooking as well and not merely by cooking the sakina.
Right.
So l'choira, it's as though I was cooking the tznon together with the meat in a pot. The absence of the meat doesn't take away from the presence of the meat taste.
He says like this. There are more in Tzaddik. He says like this. Chozek shamachal eino dover choref. Avalim ayo dover choref. Right? Let's say kingo shebishu dvorim charifim bekli shel basar. A lot, right? A lot of choref. Afilu eino ben yomo. Or he brings shedochu tavlin b'modoch shel basar. Right? Im ochlo b'cholov osor afilu b'di eved. Ad ikas samach ad basar balu apahem. So that's if you eat it with if you eat it with cholov, but not if you cook it in a Melicha pot. It doesn't appear like the Rama would be machmer in that case. Yeah, based on that. Yeah. All right. Siv Dalet. Siv Dalet is an interesting seed. It talks about lemon juice, lemonade. Mei limones shemeviim limones, Spanish name for lemons, lemon juice. Shemeviim ha'oiv de kochovim, that the goyim bring. In other words, that they bring to the marketplace. V'chen chatichot dag maliach, herring, salty fish. We're not talking about salted to preserve. We're talking fish that is salty a little bit, like herring. V'chen chatichot dag maliach shemeviim ha'oiv de kochovim bechaviyot, in barrels. Mutorim. Wow. Where is this taken from? So this is actually taken from the Shiboyle Leket. The Mechaber says it's fine because even though they may have cut the lemons, which we would say is also a davar charef, and therefore would have the duchka de sakina with the davar charef means that their isur would be transferred over to the lemons. Maximum you had 2 lemons.
I think it's more than
A couple lemons, okay? The most that the tam would travel of the isur of the knife into them, and eventually those lemons are bottled. Because we're talking about a lot of lemons.
And also, because you're cutting more lemons, the subsequently cut lemons meantime became bottled.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the blias eventually became, the rest of the lemons are gone, right? The rest.
And also the lemons that were cut become bottled in
beroiv, right.
So that's the Ramah, that's how he explains it.
Lemon number 1 or lemon number 1.
No, it's eventually like it says the rest of the lemons.
But you don't know you didn't have 100.
So that's bitul beroiv. Because Ultimately, the time of the sakin is gone. That's number one. That's with the rest of them. But what about the first couple? That's bottom right. So you have to
say the one that I'm eating is not the first.
Yeah, because here we're talking about the juice already, so you don't even have the lemons. Ramo, why? He explains, whether it's the fish or the lemons, they bring a lot. Even though the first few were nesar, let's say they use the flesh, an iser knife. They're already in this battle with the rest of them. And the rest of them are not nesorim. Why? The tam was already dissipated by cutting the first few. Anything similar to this would have the same halacha.
And importantly, he says all of them are.
Right. He said, Rama adds, all of that was the Bis Yosef. Rama adds, in some places they have a custom of eating a kruv, shekoring compost. I'm not sure which one it is. Kruv is cabbage. Even though it was cut, afagav the parus v'chatuch, it's all cut up. You shouldn't change your custom. But why would some be makel? Because, they're cutting up a lot, and eventually, at some point, and that's assuming this kruv is a davar charif, but if it wouldn't be a davar charif, you wouldn't have a problem. So here I'm saying, apparently they considered it a problematic vegetable. And that is why some are machmir and some are not, because at least, even if the first were, eventually it's all batal beroiv. Aval shar dvarim she'einam charifim, in other words, the kruv is a charif, things that are not charif at all. Watermelon, the guy is chopping, you want some batiyah, you go to the Arabs. You want some batiyah is the watermelon. You want some, you go to Mexico, and you even see the stands here sometimes. Jicama, with cactus fruit, with mango, pineapple, a melon, watermelon, other fruits, whatever it may be. They're cutting it for you. They're cutting it. Can you have it?
Well, first of all, those knives are probably only used.
Exactly. Those knives are, well, not necessarily. If you go to some places in Mexico, these are people that they bring their...
They only have one knife.
No, they're bringing their kitchen knives. They're bringing everything to cut the vegetables. Maybe when you're gone that night, they'll use that knife to chop out, to prepare dinner. So we don't know for sure. But you're right. We can make that assumption. Here, yes, and in some places where you see them pretty much doing it every day, perhaps they set it aside for that. So even though it is not explained so here, I also added that. In other words, that could be an additional reason of why some were lenient with these kinds of circumstances, these kind of situations where you're buying it from a guy, he's bringing you a whole bunch of herring, that he cut up. And, in hashgacha, there's a problem of tuna fish. Maybe they caught other fish, so you have to have a good hashgacha. Because it's a problem. There's no bittul necessarily, depending on, But what about the machinery? And the machinery in the tam, the tam of any tome fish or anything that was treif will eventually dissipate. I'm not talking about fish, but with fruits and things like that, you would also have a bittul beroiv. On top of that, we have this, that if we can assume that they're only using specialized knives for this, and not for their tray food at home, then for sure, there's no reason to suspect that they use it, that it's treif, except when they use it for other things that are treif, like with, other kinds of fish. You go to a supermarket, he's using, I'm sure, the same knives to cut all kinds of fish and all kinds of seafood. And that could be and that's a little bit of a problem because it's cold. I say a little bit of a problem, yeah.
So you say it would be more to buy from one of these?
Yeah. Right? In Mexico, I go and I buy. I just make sure that, everything is clean and that the spices that they use chile on top of it. Hot sauce. I look at it, has hashgacha, the sauce that they put. Then he adds lemon juice and various fruits. And you see it lately, they started making stands of this here too, even though they don't have always all the fruits they have in Mexico. It's very tasty. I grew up with this, so I like it very much. You go sometimes and you have like a whole fruit salad with lemon juice and with hot sauce on it, and it's a chili sauce, yeah.
Fruit.
On fruit, yeah. That's a Mexican way of eating.
Have you tried this?
No, soup doesn't go with this. This is certain chili sauce together with lemon juice and the various fruits. You like it? I think it's very tasty. Anyway, it's a certain kind of Mexican fruit salad, and there you have cold, even though you have dukkha de sakina. But there's no reason to be concerned so much, because most likely we can make that assumption, like Ilan says, that they're probably only using the knives for that. So here too, even though the Ramad Mechaber doesn't say it, they're talking about bitul beroy, we're talking about the tam eventually dissipating. That's really an additional heter.
Although here it's quite possible it's about the herring that the sales for.
Yeah. Aval shad dvarim she'enam charifim can go into puchim, apples, he says, or lefatot, yeveshim. Here he may mean turnips. Lefet sometimes is translated as turnips. If they're dry. Nohagim bahem heter kemo belimones v'nach mikvaot. I have a feeling that sometimes lefatot could be, because turnips is a little bit sharp, and we will be talking about turnip next time. Turnip has some very unique qualities. But there is a vegetable that you can buy in the vegetable store called a petrushka. Have you ever seen it? Do you know what a petrushka is? Sweet radish. It's a long white radish, but it's sweet. Have you ever seen it? It's not the round radishes. It's the long ones. It's the long radish, but it's white and it's sweet. It's used mostly for cooking. People don't just eat it. It's used for cooking fish, the soup. It has a very European, heimische, Ashkenazic taste. People remember from Poland, from Russia, petrushka was a very, very common vegetable used there. Very, very common. Like beans, the potatoes. So maybe that he called that lefet too. Either way, that would be something which is not a chorif thing. That would not be sharp. So it wouldn't be a problem. So, therefore, with herring, let's say we're dealing with a situation where it was one herring, okay? And the guy used by mistake his fleishika knife. He's not fleishika, his iser knife to cut you the herring.
Not by mistake.
Okay, and it's a double chorif now, okay? We're not talking about regular fish now, salmon that you buy at Ralph's. We're talking about the goyba, you forgot, and all of a sudden he uses knife that is a treif knife. Right. No assumptions. And it's one herring. It's not the case of chaviyos over here. Because here we have roiv, and we have that eventually the time goes away. So we have bittul, we have the time going away, no problem. One herring that's salty, the guy went and cut it with a treif knife. What now? What would you do?
I have a question for you.
Kedei netila. Even though, why am I telling you this? The police can bring this down.
Because of Harif.
No. Even though the Mechaber brings down the Shitas HaRashba, that some say that it's asers the whole thing, Yesh oimim shimchotach snoim b'saki shel isor. Kulo osor, the Rashba, or Basar osor kulo becholov, right? And unless you have shishin keneged the whole thing, but b'di'eved ein lesser rak kedei netila. So if by mistake it happened already, you don't have to say, I'm not buying it. No, go ahead and buy it. You can take it, especially if you already paid for it, and take off a netila. It's not just a little bit.
You can give that to your cat.
Yeah, you can give it.
But now, how does the knife, we're talking about here shmanunas.
Yeah.
We're not talking about blias. We're talking about shamnunas.
No, we're talking about blias.
How did the knife
or shamnunas?
How did the knife acquire the other fish he was cutting? The Isser fish are not sharp.
We're talking about a treif knife.
But not the knife that was used
for other fish. Right.
It's used for treif and fish.
But there's no problem. It's like the Melicha case. You don't use it with hot stuff.
It's not hot. It's not spicy.
Right. So it's a case. It's a real treif knife we're talking about. But if it's not a treif knife, you just use it with other treif fish that are not harifim, then there's not a problem.
This fish is hard.
Right. Yeah, because it never really absorbed any. Right. Yeah, that would be the case.
We're only worried about the shalunas.
Yeah. All right. Real quickly, the Taz brings down an interesting Taz he brings it in the name of Torah's Chatas, that if you cut a fruit and you found a worm in it, and you cut through the worm by mistake too, so you're cutting through the worm into the fruit, it's okay to eat the fruit just to remove, even though the fruit might be a double charif a little bit, it's okay, and then you have the tam of the worm, it's okay to just remove a little bit of where the worm was, and the fruit is okay. Why? So the Pri Megadim explains that there's an old machlokes between the Shach and Taz in Hilchos Toiloim, if we should be concerned about the tam of worms. We obviously don't want to eat worms, certain worms at least, We definitely have to check it for worms. But the Evet, according to the Taz, there's no concern of the tam of the toilah, because according to the Taz, it will be in the same category as flies and certain insects that are poggled.
Right? So time to come.
Right.
See the word.
The Shach says we only learned that by flies, not by toilah. So the Shach says there's no such thing as learning Tanakh by worms. He says maybe worms are not so poggled. So anyway, so he would be considered, but everybody would be, I think, masking here, that just removing it a little bit would be sufficient. You wouldn't have to go to the extent of being.
Now, and we're talking about a worm here that was already born in the fruit.
Right. We're talking about the case where one would pose a problem. So if you have that, if it ever happens, some balabosses may throw out the whole thing. But obviously,
I certainly would.
yeah, if you cut around a little bit, all it would require is a little bit. That would be sufficient.
What about the tequila?
Well, you don't want to have that tequila.
No,
Right.
saying it's a problem.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, you're right. Tam. Yeah, and it's bottled, but lechatchila, I wouldn't. Yeah.
But the problem is it's going to be bottled with shisha.
Right.
There's the issue
But it's
of
vein.
money.
No, he's not talking about eating the. No. We're talking about it when it's not dissolved.
Right.
You wouldn't eat the worm. The question is, can you have the tequila?
The tequila for the first 2/3 of the
I don't think anybody gives an ashgacha that kind of a tequila.
Okay, but
Obviously, yeah. If you were really thirsty, that's all you had. It's bottled. It's bottled.
Says that the worm doesn't
Right. You're right. You're very good point. You're right. Very good point. Yeah. According to the Taz, it may not be such a problem. And even if there is a little bit of time, it's bottled. It's for sure bottled. Yeah. Would you want to drink it? No, right. Yeah. All right. Just to summarize here, Sif Dalet is, even though we have the heterim mentioned over here in these kinds of exceptional cases of lemon juice and chabiyas where there's quantities, also we can keep in mind that there is also the additional heterim that can be useful, that it's very possible that specialized tools, specialized knives were used over here, right? As long as we know that it appears to be like that. And there are some poskim that are only machmer and snon anyway as a double charif, right? And there are some that are matri that even if it's a snoin, if it's a Eino ben Yoimo, the sakinim that he used, it's not a problem. It's still pugger. No, we have enough heterim if we need to apply it to these kind of situations and not worry about it. You know, you're somewhere, you're visiting, you want to have something, and you see that this is the way they transport it, they bring it. You can remember this halacha that you have various heterim here that would permit it even lechatchila. That's what is important to remember. This is even a lechatchila that they did. Yeah, but the evet, what did I do? I bought it. I mixed it. No. Lechatchila, you can go ahead and do it. We're not talking about cooking here. We're talking about cold, even though it's spicy, it's hot, it's chorib, and there's some sort of ducha de sakina. However, it's bottle, and it could be also that the kelim that you use is only for that. Some say this is not a double chorib necessarily. So there's enough heterim that we can definitely rely on it lechatchila. Okay.